Here with Gubabi once again.
What's up?
We're about to talk about one of my favorite games of when did it come out? 2019? I think it was 2019.
No, I think it's a bit.
No, I think end of 2019.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, because Dev got it for me for Christmas.
Okay, the 2019 it is.
Yeah, one of my favorite games of 2019, but really only played it 2020. Star Wars Fallen Order. I really want to talk about essentially. Well, I want to talk about the idea of trauma when it in relation to childhood. You know, you and I both do a lot of work with young people before we sound weird and we get flagged by CISA. But yeah, I want to talk about just the idea of childhood trauma when it comes to Cal specifically and his experience in Star Wars. I brought you on because you are very much an expert in Star Wars.
Thank you.
Passively liked it, but I've never been invested. Like, I don't know a lot of the lore. So I really want to talk about it with you specifically. I felt that, I feel like in the movies, what was it? When did Order 66 happen? Episode 3?
Yeah.
Episode 3 is really when it happened, and it felt more like the Jedi lost the war. But seeing it through Cal's eyes as a child, it gave Order 66, which is a galactic event, a very personal story. And I'm like, this is not a war that the Jedi lost. This was a genocide. So I don't know if you want to talk more about the Order 66 and really what the ramifications were throughout the galaxy.
So just I want to add a little point that in terms of how the Order 66 was framed, if you remember in episode 3, it was very much so the Jedi Order, the generals, they were fighting the war against the Separatists, so forth. And then Order 66 came into action. So mindset-wise, we're always in that war state. So that's how it was framed. But if you look at the Jedi Fallen Order, Cal and his master, Gerald Tapal, they were attacked while training during Cal's training session. True. So if you didn't know the war was going on, you wouldn't think that at the time, and then all of a sudden the clone troopers turned on them. So it gives it more of a, as you said, a personal touch. Yeah. Because of just how it's framed and was happening to create that context. So for those of you who don't know, Order 66 was an order that was implanted in all clones. Actually, the majority of clones, there were a few exceptions.
Just so you guys know, the clones are stormtroopers, in case you didn't know that.
Actually.
Wait, what? Oh, okay. Educate me, bro. Educate us. Educate us.
The thing about during the episode 1, 2, and 3, well, not 1, 2 and 3, when the clone troopers were created up until Order 66, they were clone troopers based off of Jango Fett, which was Mandalorian, right? Yeah. So what happens is that after, with the events of 4, 5, and 6, and so forth, a lot of people make fun of stormtroopers because they have terrible aim. But if you notice episode 2 and 3, their aim is impeccable. And there's actually a reason, probably
I was about to ask about that.
A retcon that happened. After the events of episode 3, the Empire actually started cracking down on clone troopers and slowly started not disposing of them, but pushing them into situations where they would just literally die out. And they started recruiting people who want to fight for the Empire. Average Joes.
Like in the recent Star Wars movies. With Finn.
Yeah, like with Finn and stuff. But in the recent movies, they've been more conditioned to be soldiers and all that stuff. Yeah. But the Empire was just taking in whoever to be. Oh. And there was a sentiment that was very anti-clone. Like if you watch the Disney Plus show currently, Bad Batch, it follows the ramifications of that with the 4 clone troopers, the main characters of the show, and how the Empire has been treating clones and putting them just in direct situations. And there's a little bit of a stigma towards clones. They fulfilled their purpose. We don't need them anymore. There's no more war to fight. Doesn't make sense to have... And the Empire wanted to stop leaning on the production of clones because they felt that they had something on them in that respect. Okay. Yeah. But Order 66, going back to it, clones were implanted with a biochip in their brain where as soon as Order 66 was given, they had to actually obey it 100%. There was no exceptions.
I was actually wondering, sorry if I could jump in, I was actually wondering about that because in the story, we saw how and you could see, what's going to happen. Like when you're going through Cal's past, the last set of training that he's doing.
Yeah.
With what's his name again?
Jaro Tapal.
Jaro Tapal.
Mr. Tapal.
Mr. Tapal. Note how like Jaro Tapal sounds cool, but if you say Mr. Tapal, it just sounds goofy. But when they're going through that, you could see him bonding with the stormtroopers, and I'm just like, why would they just have such a positive camaraderie relationship with Cal? Like, as if they're like mentors, to being like, we need to murder him, his mentor. Yeah. So you telling me that like that there's chips, and I'm like, this makes a lot of sense.
And especially if you looked at the 3D series also on Disney Plus.
By the way, we are not sponsored by Disney Plus.
Yeah, that's actually a good thing to say. Like, I'm talking a lot about Disney Plus.
Right.
But during the Clone Wars, there were instances of actually the specific instance of a clone trooper that actually turned against their Jedi general before Order 66 due to a faulty chip in his brain, which caused actually investigation within the clone army. Mm-hmm. And some clones were getting suspicious. And there's one clone, don't remember his name, but he was one of the group called Fives. He actually found out that they had chips, and he uncovered the conspiracy to kill the Jedi, and the clone army actually killed him off to protect the secret.
Oh, shit. I didn't even know that. I was just like, wow, like none of them ended up rebelling. So wow, yeah. They actually... So
there was instances, like for instance, going back to the Bad Batch currently, they were called the Bad Batch because they were defective clones. They weren't perfect, but their tactics were so unpredictable, like they were a very reliable unit. When Order 66 came into fruition, their chips did not work properly, so they never turned against their Jedi. If anything, they fled the Republic because they did not understand what was happening with their clone brothers, only to discover later on. And that's why they never fought for the Empire, and why the Empire is hunting them down in the current series.
Okay, this makes a lot of sense. So this helps even me in terms of understanding Star Wars. So one of the things I want to ask you, just going as we're already talking about Order 66, how did you feel? This is a two-part question. How do you feel about how Order 66? Because I know you also, to give you guys context, Gubabi also read the comics and the novels, so he knows all of it. He's not just watched the movies and like read some stuff on Wikipedia or Wikipedia. See, I know some stuff.
Yeah, good catch.
I wanted to ask you, how did you feel about Order 66 being portrayed in Episode 3, and how did you feel about how it was portrayed in Fallen Order?
Well, in Episode 3, I think both in their respective media were very well portrayed. Grievances of Episode 3, the prequels aside, since the movie was very war-based, Order 66 was really portrayed as a very tragic experience, but as the end of the war, so it wrapped that up really nicely. Now, if I look at Fallen Order, for those who have played the game, is a very personal story for Cal Kestis, as he is the main character, and it deals with him reestablishing his Force connection, and slowly you understand why his Force connection was severed in the first place, going through his traumas. Going back to Order 66, when it did happen, you see, yes, Order 66 killed multiple Jedi, which is unfortunate. However, in terms in Cal Kestis' eyes, they don't really show that it was attacking all the generals. There was more emphasis like, this is happening to me. They're trying to kill me. Yeah. They killed my master. Yeah. And it just shows to further push the point that this is a traumatic instant for him, and that he's trying to build himself back to what he should have been, well, the level he would have been if everything didn't happen in that way, and then grow even past that. Yeah.
I really like that as well, in a sense of, so on one part, you're saying like it's me and my, because like what they all, like going back to what you're saying in terms of Episode 3, it was very war-based. You're not seeing like, except for like the one, correct me if I'm wrong, but except for that one scene where Anakin wiped out all the Padawans, right? There wasn't a lot of seeing like Padawans like being like, oh my gosh, we're on the ship, it's only me and my master, and we have to escape. And with the I think they were called Force memories in the game.
I believe
I think they're Force memories. Is that actually a thing, by the way?
Force memories? Let me think. I know through the Force they can leave imprints of things that occurred, but it was never portrayed in such like a vivid manner. Okay. But like if I go into let's say episode hold on a second. Episode 9, even though a lot of people don't like the movie, there was times, and actually even episode 7 with main character Rey Skywalker, when she touched certain objects, she was getting visions. Like when she touched the Skywalker lightsaber the first time.
I remember that, yeah.
And even when she touched, not exactly sure, I think it was the Sith dagger, she was getting flashes and such. So it's new, yes, but no.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, you got to see so many experiences, personal stories once again, of people getting either spotted or barely surviving Order 66 and them living with the trauma of that. And that's what I really liked about the story, in the sense of, so this is one of the reasons I want to talk about it, because we put so much, and it's not a bad thing, but we put a lot of value in terms of like maintaining the imagination we had as children, you know, in terms of, maybe you've heard of the term, but it's essentially like the way children think is egocentric and magical. Like you think that you can do anything, which is good. You're like, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a firefighter. And so I want to be the president. And you know, that may not play out necessarily in life, but like you have that mentality of I can just do that. But when you think that way, this is the reason why kids, when you know they go through, when their parents get divorced, or if someone ends up passing away, or they're put into adoption, whatever, they blame themselves because it's egocentric. Like, I'm the reason for this thing. And I really loved how they showed that the I guess you could say drawbacks of going through something as a child, as opposed to like an adult, where you're able to process things better. In the sense of like, he never let go of Order 66. It was always my fault, me and my master. I went through this. I could have done it better. And he just carried that for like at least a decade.
Yeah.
So I really like that, and how they portray, and even just like to piggyback off what you were saying before, him overcoming that, and I forgot how you worded it, but essentially like he was able to go beyond. Yeah. Specifically because like you and I were watching some of the cutscenes, and it never made that connection to me. He went from single lightsaber to dual, and Jar Patal was a dual-ended lightsaber user.
Yep. And what we watched with what happened to his Kyber crystal, since Kyber crystal is connected to the Force, certain times they'll behave in ways to benefit the user. So when his crystal cracked, it showed him a new path that he could take. So when he forged his double-ended lightsaber, when he reforged his new saber, which was a homage to Jar Patal, he was able to split it. I would even say, further symbolizing that he broke apart the ties that binded him to his past, and forged something completely new out of it, which I found was the symbolism was very well put.
Yeah, I remember when you were telling me that, I didn't even think of that, and that was coincidentally his most powerful attack when he did the dual-ended lightsaber attacks. It did crazy damage. I was just like, I could see why we couldn't unlock this attack at the beginning. The other thing I really felt that was really well done is like how they showed he carried the trauma throughout the game. Like, and I mean, it's understandable, like any child who would go through that would not be okay after that. But you know, just things like even though Jar Patal told him to trust in the Force, he didn't for throughout pretty much the entirety of the game. It took a long time for him to be willing to even use a lightsaber again. Yeah. And even when he did, I think he was fighting when what planet, Bracca,
the garbage planet thing? Yeah. Bracca.
Yeah, when he was there, right? He could barely hold his own against Ninth Sister. It's not like Cal is a very capable Jedi on his own, but because he I guess you say repressed who he was and his memories, he could barely do anything against Ninth Sister at the beginning. Versus the last fight, right, where you're able to take her out. Yeah, I really like that, and like how essentially he just stopped using his Force to the point where he didn't know how to use it. Like at the beginning, you can't even double jump.
Yep, that's true. Even the basics of which he was trained when he was a kid were lost.
Exactly. Like in many ways, like him being a kid could have probably bodied him as like a full-fledged adult.
True.
It was that, and even I didn't realize it until what was it? Dathomir.
The witch planet.
The witch planet.
Yeah.
And when he's dealing with his repressed memories of fighting against his mentor. Jar Patal. I keep saying Patal. Jar Patal. I really liked. I didn't realize. I'm throughout the whole game, I'm man, why do you have to go to that point of I didn't like that part in Dathomir where you had to like escape running from the witches. I'm like, bro, I can't use the Force. I can't use a lightsaber.
Just let me play the game.
Basically, you're a Jedi, so you're not using guns, and that's when all the witches are attacking you. Everything, they're chasing you, trying to grab you. And I'm just like, I'm so stressed out right now. I remember I even like ran around in circles. I'm like, where am I going? Because I can't even because you can't even open up the map, right? Because they're being chased, and you can't freeze anybody because you don't have any Force attack. And that was the other thing. It wasn't just that you broke your lightsaber; you were completely cut off from the Force.
Yeah,
I hated that part. But it made sense, for the whole story. But even in terms of that situation, I didn't realize until when we were watching the scene again on YouTube, he's been carrying a busted lightsaber that whole time. Like from the moment he left the ship to that point on Dathomir, he's been using a damaged lightsaber.
Which goes even further in the symbolism. It's that saber. Saber is for Jedi as it represents themselves. Right?
See where you're going with this. Mm-hmm.
And it's busted, reflecting his current mental state that is, mental, emotional, and so forth, that he's not in his prime condition.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because I remember, even before they got into his past, I remember, I forgot, what's her name? The one that was kind of essentially mentoring.
Siri?
Siri?
Cere?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Not iPhone before my iPhone starts talking or something. What was that? What did you say, bro? It was saying she was like, every time she's trying to talk to him about like Order 66 or like something he may have gone through, if he's okay, he just wasn't. I don't know if you remember. I felt it was the case. You can speak on it yourself, but I felt like he wasn't emotionally available to talk about it.
No, I agree.
You felt that too? Yeah. He was just like, I'm fine, I'm okay, and I'm like,
he's been carrying everything for so long. It felt unnatural for him to let someone else help him with the burden. It was just it was not natural for him. That's what I think on that.
Yeah, that's why I always felt like this guy, like it's something like every time she was asking like he was okay, I'm like, something feels off. Like, why are you responding that way? And I'm like, yeah, you just haven't dealt with any of this stuff for like all these years that you've just been holding it inside. And even in terms of her too, right? She had like a lot of trauma. I think she had to abandon Second Sister during Order 66, right?
Something of the sort. Honestly, that part for me is a bit vague. I know Second Sister hates her because she blames her for what happened. So yeah. I'm assuming that Ciri's actions or inactions in this case.
Trilla, I think. Trilla?
Yes, Trilla was the apprentice. Her action, her inaction led to her directly or exactly becoming a Night Sister.
Yeah. And even for her, right, Ciri, like even for her, there was a lot of trauma that she carried from Order 66. I don't know if she necessarily blamed herself in the same extent. I think she just decided not to be a Jedi anymore. I think she like relinquished her position as one. But I don't feel like she carried it to heart as much as Cal did. I don't know if you...
Yeah, I find that what is very common for... there was not a lot of survivors of Order 66 in the first place.
For sure.
But one thing that was very not popular, that was done quite a lot with Jedi Masters, is that they did go into self-exile. They stopped practicing the Force and they just blended in. I'll give the Yoda example. Even though Yoda took it probably the hardest, since being the Grand Master of the Jedi Council, a lot of responsibility fell with him. He went to self-exile and just waited until things were better. Obi-Wan as well went to exile. Different type of exile because he had the mission to guard Luke.
Self-imposed mission, if I remember correctly, too.
Exactly, self-imposed. There was also... I'm not sure if he's canon anymore, but from Legends, I think his name was Al Shareth, who went into exile also on Tatooine, ran into Obi-Wan. He lived with Tusken Raiders and all that jazz.
Tatooine. Which planet is that again?
Tatooine's a sand planet where Luke in episode 4 was raised and such. Right. But Al Shareth eventually, years later, became the new Dark Lord of the Sith.
Oh, that was the guy that you were telling me about yesterday, right?
Yeah. So most of them went into self-exile because they realized also they could not fight the war and that they were wrong in their teachings of believing in the Chosen One. Because ultimately, for those who knew, Vader, who did bring down the majority of the Jedi, at the Jedi Council, and led the unit called the 501st clone trooper battalion into the temple was trained by them. He was groomed by them. And they also believed that he was the one to bring balance to the Force at the time. So for him to be ultimately the reason why the genocide was successful probably took a blow to their ego and realized that their teachings were very wrong and that there was something terribly not right with how they thought that things should have been done.
Were they wrong?
The prophecy, as Yoda puts it in episode 3, could have been misread. And ultimately, episode 7, 8, 9 apart, it was true. Like Vader at the time, when he did wipe out everyone, when he grew up to be Darth Vader and he saved Luke from being killed from the Emperor, he did bring balance to the Force. So at the time, he did equalize everything. There was 2 Sith and just a handful of Jedi left. So he did, in a sense, bring balance to the Force from a certain point of view.
I had a question based off that. I wanted to ask you. Oh, there we go. Was it destiny for Darth Vader to go to Anakin to go to the dark side? Or was it just kind of like the way it played out?
It could be both, to be honest. From what I can tell, about the Force and all that, the Force it moves in its own mysterious ways, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, if I had to draw a parallel, it's like God and religion. You know, there's a lot of things that happened that were good and bad, but it's rationalized that it's God's plan. So take that same analogy, put that in Star Wars. It's kind of all works for the Force's plan, because the Force is not good or bad. The Force is the Force. So for Anakin to bring balance to the Force, to equalize it, it can be rationalized that it was the will of the Force, aka destiny, or it could have just worked out that way. But there's no way to really say or even measure that.
Okay. Yeah, so kind of going back on in terms of Kyle, you're also answering some of my Star Wars questions because I've been thinking about them for quite some time. I always found, Star Wars overall just has a lot of tragedy in it. I'm just like, this is really sad, but like, space samurais, and bounty hunters. I'm like, this is crazy. I wanted to kind of relate to it, like, kind of bring this on to the, just personal conversations, in a sense of just learning not to blame yourself for certain things and realizing certain things are out of your control. I often, like, in terms of my own experiences, I would say, like, I often blame myself for, like, how, like, when I was younger, I used to blame myself for how, like, my parents didn't quite understand me. And I'm not even talking about, like, teenage angsties where you're just like, oh, no one understands me. I'm talking about even, like, when I was, like, 10 or whatever, no one really understood why I was so, like, obsessive and really into certain things, and my parents not knowing how to
deal, in a sense,
or relate and deal with my, I guess you could say, eccentricities, and feeling like no one really understood me in terms of how I was, especially since, like, there's a big age gap between me and the rest of my family. Like, Angie is like 8 years older than me, and then my parents are like 35 years older than me, right? So there's a big age gap. Like, literally, I'm the baby of the family. So going through a lot of experience and just not really being understood, it always felt like no one understands me. But as I've gotten older, I've had some of those conversations with my mom, especially once I started therapy. I don't know if I talked to you about this, but inadvertently, me doing therapy brought me and my mom, like, much closer. I didn't expect that to happen. And, like, she often, like, blames herself now for some of the things I talked to her about. Like she thought, like, for instance, I like going to summer school, and I was like, bro, you know me, I hate school. I know we work with kids, we help them with school, but, like, I don't like school. And you and I talked about how, like, the feelings of the education system, like, at least here in North America, I can't speak on the rest of the world. Maybe you can, but as you're more traveled than me, significantly more, my mom would often feel bad for some of the things that she may have, her and my dad may have misstepped on. But I'm like, it's not your fault, you didn't know. But when I was younger, I definitely internalized certain things. And even, like, dating, there's so many things that, like, I guess we all kind of go through and internalize and thinking it's our fault. And we end up, like, to put it figuratively, we end up carrying a broken lightsaber throughout our lives without finding our own Kuiper crystals. I don't know if you wanted to touch on that, especially with some of the kids that you've worked with as well.
I agree on all those points. And like, if I had to talk about work experience, there's been a lot of kids that, they act a certain way, and once you get to know them, you know that there's like a bunch of situations of which they do take very personally, because unfortunately I find that some of these children, they're not told that
it's not their fault.
That's not their fault, and at the end of the day, they are kids. Kids, I find, are they're the minds of tomorrow, but they're not even the reason why things are the way they are in their lives. That's the burden of adults.
Agreed.
So it's not fair that they just because of how the circumstances occur that they believe that they're responsible, but at the same time, it's hard for them not to think that way because such things aren't explained to them. And then as they get older, it either festers or they're told or explained elsewhere, like let's say through therapy, as you said, and it helps clarify some things. It's also why I like to be in education, because I can also get to know kids. Because I've talked to a lot of kids and with a bunch of different situations, and they come for me for advice. They ask like, "Why do you think this is?" And I guide them the best I can, and just give them the clarity that you're still a kid and you have responsibilities, but these things that are affecting you
aren't your responsibility.
Yeah, they aren't your responsibility, and they're not your fault. You do your best. That's what counts. When you're older, then you can start taking on real burden.
Yeah.
So going back to Fallen Order, all these things were thrust upon Cal, and I'm not even sure in the game if he was fully explained what happened. Maybe like later when he grew up, but at the time he did not know what was going on with Order 66.
Yeah.
So when something traumatic happens to you in that sense, and there's no closure, there's no communication, there's no explanation, the only thing you can really do is put that on yourself, either consciously or subconsciously, which leads to festering and closing off and just not trusting variables around you anymore.
The Force. And you got me thinking, because I think that, honestly, as much as like, how do I find my words? As much as the journey of Fallen Order was a healing process, because when you're talking about adults, as much as a healing process for Cal, I feel like Siri being in his life was the healing process, because he was that adult that gave him that, I don't know, initiated the closure.
Yeah.
That helped him get to where he got to, because I don't think he would have been able to, like the guy who was the pilot, like, yeah, he may have been able to help in the story, but he wouldn't have been able to kind of, I guess you could say, guide Cal in the way that Siri did.
Yeah. And at the same time, they both related in a certain way. With Cal, he lost his teacher, and she lost her student. So they're
able to
help each other.
Yeah. He became the student that she lost, and she became the mentor that he lost. Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Never thought about that, actually.
Me neither, until it was brought up.
Yeah, because like without her, he wouldn't be able to, because she was the one who really guided him, and she was the one who ended up like saving him from Darth Vader even at the end. I was really sad when I thought that she died, when Darth Vader was like, whoop, bye.
Yep, off the cliff.
I was like, really? After all that? Right? Yeah. And then even how she was able to, as you're getting me thinking, and he was able to make closure with Jal Tapal. I did it this time. When he went, where did he face? I think he came back to the temple again, and that's when he did the forced meditation and faced him again the second time.
I believe so. My memory's not 100% on that matter, but I think so.
Okay, yeah. And he was able to do that and get the close that he needed from his mentor dying, and realizing like, it wasn't my fault. Which, Siri had to first tell him, like, it wasn't your fault. You were a child. You were a Padawan. You didn't know. It was a genocide. This is nothing to do with you.
Right.
And then for her, and then for Siri, she was also able to get closure by healing Trilla, which I didn't see it when I first played, when we were watching the clips again on YouTube, seeing, correct me if I'm wrong, when you're part of the Sith, your eye color changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually, in most circumstances.
Yeah. It looked to me like her eye color changed.
I thought so too, yeah, when you pointed that out.
Yeah. It looked like her eye color changed, like she fully healed, and then obviously Darth Vader's like, yo, are you forgiving people, fam?
Oh, you can't do that. You gotta pay death,
right? You can't be, if you're gonna be my student, the one thing we don't do here is forgiveness.
You know how I feel about the F word.
This is for okay, so side joke, but like Dev and I have been watching like church sermons, and one of the pastors has a term called FU, forgive yourself. So
really? That's pretty funny.
Right? So basically what's it called? Yo, so I feel about the FU term. What?
That's great.
Right? Yeah. I really wish that Trilla didn't die, but I was just like, yeah, Darth Vader being your mentor and you being the second sister.
I'll be honest, like, it was tragic that Trilla died, but at the same time, journey-wise, she did find peace and forgiveness, and she really wanted to, as it showed in the game, she really just wanted to be told that, you know, that her mentor was sorry for everything that's happened, and going back,
trauma.
Exactly, you know, having that adult tell you, listen, it's not your fault, there were circumstances beyond your control, and when she fully understood that, as like the eyes seemed like it changed color, you can tell like she just felt lifted and free. So her dying, she at least died in peace.
It's true.
So her journey came to an end.
It's true. Yeah, I thought, I guess you could say they really explored just the whole, I guess it's not even just the game, it's just about childhood trauma, but like childhood trauma and the dynamics between children and adults versus, you know, children taking too much accountability, and the responsibility of an adult is to shoulder the burden of accountability from children.
I'd say to mitigate the accountability, to properly disperse, like, this is this fault, this is this fault, this is my fault, and such.
True. Yeah. And being able to do that yourself, because I mean, like, I can't recall any stories of Jedi dodging accountability. Maybe you can speak on that, but like, I felt that was really well done in terms of all of them taking the accountability and taking away from the children, and the children understanding, like, actually it wasn't my fault. And you obviously know what happens when, you know, you blame a child for something. That's internalized. Especially when that child can't properly rationalize that, you know, like, it's my fault, but how is it my fault? And they can't make the link. They don't know how to fix it, and it creates fear. Exactly. What if it happens again? This thing that I cannot control, this thing that I'm not even told why it's going wrong. Exactly. Hence, like, Cal not being able to use the Force for like a majority of the game. Yeah. Yeah, I can't recall any Jedi's like not being able to like blaming. Well, I mean, no, actually, yes. Like everyone in the dark side.
Yeah, that's fair. That's like the number one reason people go to the dark side,
right? So like, it's your fault. Like, I think I think Anakin like blamed the Jedi for like his not having a family and his mom dying and stuff, right?
In a sense, yeah. He did, especially in the last fight with Obi-Wan, he did just put a lot of blame on him. But the thing about the dark side was twisting his mind. He thought that Padme was betraying him and going Obi-Wan. That's why he choked her out and all that stuff. But the thing about Vader, as revealed in the comics, Darth Vader Volume 1, I think, of 2017, Vader initially, like, he internalized a lot of trauma and grief for everything that happened. He did blame himself for his mother's death, which is ridiculous, not his fault. But, you know, in episode 2, he got there, he had visions, he didn't listen to him till the last second, and he got there just in time to see her die. And he knew that if he reacted sooner, he could have saved her. He had visions of Padme dying, which stressed him out because that's what happened to his mother. And ultimately she died, and he feels it was because of his actions. Especially as Sidious told him when he put on the suit, he's like, Padme, unfortunately, due to your anger, died. Like, you killed her. So he held that with him, and it's the pain and anger that drives him to be Vader, which he finally was able to fully let go once he did meet Luke.
I was about to say that, his child.
Yeah. First, when he knew he had children, he realized that Sidious did fully betray him, and that his son actually did care about him.
That's why he's like, if you join me, we can take over
his father and son.
Oh, I thought he was just, cause it's like, it didn't, as you're saying that, it wasn't an alignment. I'm like, you're very low. I mean, yes, I know cis and their students, like, it's a cycle of betrayal. So like, it's quote unquote destiny for Darth Vader to, you know, betray Darth Sidious. But like, I was like, you're seemingly loyal and doing everything you're supposed to, and then as soon as you see your son, like, hey, you know what? We can do all of this. I'm like, as you're saying that now, okay, it's because he saw that that's what kind of spurred the concept of revenge for him, in a sense, or usurping him.
Especially like if you look at episode 3, there was a lot of the Emperor Palpatine, Sidious, you know, slowly pulling Anakin to the dark side, which I like because in episode 6 it was the complete mirror. It was Luke pulling Vader slowly to the light side, as Luke said, line for like, I've seen the good in you, and I sense your conflict. and he was slowly not manipulating, but pulling out his true feelings, of which Vader tried his hardest to keep down with the thoughts of his dead mother, his dead wife, and all that. And eventually he just let go, and then he realized that I need to take out the Emperor to save my son.
So that actually makes it an interesting question, going back on the teaching of the Jedi. Did they fail Anakin in terms of helping him heal?
In terms of helping him heal, yes, they absolutely did.
Okay.
Like, going back to not telling kids it's their fault, no one told Anakin, because compassion is encouraged in the Jedi Order.
For sure.
But attachments are not, in a sense.
Yeah, you're not supposed to be severely attached to certain individuals. You're supposed to love life in general, but not love one specifically more than others. Correct me if I'm wrong. Pretty
much. But his situation with Padme, it was implied that Obi-Wan was aware the entire time, but he never tried to talk through to him to explain that, like, it's going on, it's okay, it's happening, which led Anakin to just distrust the Jedi Order in general. And the Jedi Order were very rigid in their terms and beliefs, because if you look at years later, also not canon anymore, Luke,
had his own family, right?
Yeah, he married, he loved, he had a child, and him and his wife were very close, a very successful marriage. And they had a child, so he went as far in a relationship as you can go.
Yeah.
And Luke did skirt on the side of the dark side for a bit, but he had perfect control.
I think he's gray, right?
Well, no, he's actually good. But at the time of which he did tap in the dark side a bit, he did go a bit gray. But he was still on the good side. He eventually held the title that was held by Yoda years before as Grand Master Jedi.
I know he was able to tap into... like, naturally tap into, like, Force lightning, right?
Yep, because he was... that's a huge other story. A lot of people like to make fun of Episode 9 because Sidious returned, but if you actually are a big Star Wars fan, you'll know that it's actually pulled from legends. This actually did happen in books. Palpatine's spirit did not die in Episode 6. He went to a clone body, and he was trying to survive by jumping from body to body, and Luke realized that he wasn't dead, so he decided to train under him to learn his weakness so he can take him out. But Palpatine the entire time wanted to take Luke's body, and then Luke learned abilities and all that stuff, and Luke eventually defeated Palpatine.
Wow, that's one angry ass nigga.
Fun fact for all you Episode 9 blind haters: know your facts first.
You heard it here, guys. You heard it here, folks. Okay, that's really interesting. I guess it does make sense for the Jedi to blame themselves for their own destruction with how they weren't able to, I guess you could say, properly mentor Anakin.
Yep, the Jedi had a lot of hubris, and there's a lot of things that have been said that the Jedi grew very sloppy in their and arrogant in times of peace, especially because the Sith were like rumored to be extinct at that point, so they stopped growing and teaching properly. They became stagnant.
I remember you mentioning that to me, so I guess this is an example of that, in a sense of not knowing how to. They lacked fluidity.
Yeah.
Okay. And I would also argue that's essentially what Luke brought.
Yep. Luke showed him as a different way, especially to Yoda. He thought that, man, I won't train Luke. He's too old. But Obi-Wan convinced him, and look how he turned out.
I don't even remember that, really.
Yep.
He was too old?
Yep. There's a big rule, and Yoda repeated that It was actually done in Episode 6, and then in Episode 1, the Council didn't want to train Anakin originally. That's when they first were introduced to him, because he was too old. They take kids when they're very young.
Right, so and they can take them from their families, essentially.
And Anakin was a special case because they believed he was the chosen one due to his midichlorian count. But the problem was that since he wasn't taken when he was very young, he had already experienced a lot of hardships on his own, with the slavery, and he just was taken away from his mom. So those type of feelings, I don't know if they ever went into it, but I don't think they were ever dealt with. And you have something like that, you need therapy. So those feelings of loss and abandonment, he carried with him as he grew up, and then it festered into the
dark side.
Yeah.
So essentially, he carried the most busted lightsaber.
Exactly. Yeah, I would say.
Okay. Yeah, no, this has really been like a fruitful conversation in terms of really just, I want to talk about this, but I'm also learning about just Star Wars and just like how, you want to see it? how so much trauma can, essentially how like there we go, how much unresolved trauma can lead one down the dark side.
Yeah.
And how that easily happens. And as you're making remember that, I don't know if you got to that point or remember it, but when Cal got the, I don't know what the thing called, the
holocron.
There we go, the Deus Ex Machina thing. When he got the thing, the MacGuffin. There we go, that's the term. When he got when he got the MacGuffin, what's it called actually? Holocron. Yeah. And he saw potential future of him trying to reestablish the Jedi Order, and eventually you saw him becoming an Inquisitor. That makes sense, because like if he actually did it and that thing happened again, essentially Order 66 happening all over again with him and his mini Jedi Order, he probably would have definitely gone. He would have been the easiest susceptible to go into the dark side.
Yep, that's true. And as Yoda put it in Episode 5, when Luke was on the planet being trained and he wanted to go save his friends, Yoda said, if you take the quick and easy path like Vader did, you'll become an agent of evil.
What is easy? Okay, I do want to ask that, as much as that's obvious. What was the quick and easy path that Vader took?
The thing is, in terms of saving his wife, he just, when he was seduced by Sidious, he bought into exactly what he was saying. I need this power to save my wife now. And that is what caused his wife to die inadvertently.
And that was him tapping into the dark side?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he was desperate at that time. So if Anakin had been a little bit more rational about that, it's hard to say, but he might have been able to fully save her. Well, actually, she just wouldn't have died. He didn't go to the dark side.
This is true. But at the same time, that couldn't have happened because he never trusted the Jedi Order, because they really and truly, for lack of a better word, they failed him in terms of helping him heal. There we go. They treat him more as a warrior than a human.
And they also, there's that, and also the fact that they viewed him as the chosen one. They already put him at a pedestal. He will save us. You know? Never thought of like maybe he needs to be saved by us first. They just expect his faults.
Yeah,
exactly. But Obi-Wan was the first to realize it as he looked down on Anakin he looked at him when he's got his lips chopped. He said, I failed you and I loved you. He realized that he should have done more. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if there's any other extra points you want to add in terms of Star Wars. This has been a very fruitful conversation.
No, actually, I am good. I said more than I thought I was going to say on the matters.
Same here. And also you helped me understand certain things. And I'm like, because, I'm thinking of my words. I didn't understand, and obviously, everyone has their own different experiences. Never mind, these are fictional characters. I didn't understand why Anakin didn't realize what he was doing. Like the harm he was causing to those around him, and what ultimately he ended up doing in terms of Order 66 and everything. But as you're saying that, this is someone who just carried like a lifetime of trauma that no one has ever acknowledged until he saw his own child. And that's when he finally healed.
Yep.
Okay. All right, guys. I hope you guys took away a lot from this conversation. I know Gabe and I definitely did. And hopefully you guys can learn to heal as well in terms of dealing with your own damaged lightsabers. Black Nerd Talks, we out.